bringing on aboard to be talking about opening day. And I had to search far and wide for the best around the Pacific Northwest. And I just so happened to come across the best one there. Connor Webb, the Couch GM, joining us here on the show. So first of all, happy opening day to you, my friend. I mean, Mariners fans have got to be loving it to be down there up in T-Mobile Park, man. I mean, do you have a single like opening day memory like that you can go back that was just the best one you'll never forget?
Happy opening day to you as well. It's a really exciting time for baseball fans, for Mariners fans. I don't have necessarily one in mind, but because I actually live 2.5 hours south of Seattle, so I get up there as often as I can. And whenever I have media credentials, then that's when I really get up there. So I'm not there opening day today, unfortunately, but just when baseball comes back around, it's always such a long off season. The Mariners fans, we don't know what the front office might be doing. Some of the moves that happen at the beginning of the off season aren't the greatest, on paper or the greatest look. But then by the time you get to spring training, by the time you get to opening day, there's always a reason to be excited. And this is definitely another year to be excited.
And you got to think about it because baseball, like it has been in my life, like I started off, is that it's a game that defies the odds. Because again, everybody could basically put their chips in and think, oh, the Dodgers are going to represent the World Series. The Astros are going to be back in. But the Diamondbacks and Rangers gave us something different last season. So when you start looking into this season, and as you know, Ohtani now is a Dodger, the Braves are starting to get, loading up. I mean, how do you kind of outlook this baseball season? Because in the end, you'll have those high talented teams, but maybe there's a Cinderella story team that might be out there. How do you kind of outlook this 24 season?
Yeah, Ken, as you were talking about, there's definitely the teams and the franchises that are going to have the higher payrolls year over year. They're going to get the Otanis and the Braves are loaded. There's always going to be the teams that are going to come out of the woodworks. Like last year, who expected the Diamondbacks to be in the World Series? Even the Rangers, really. They signed a bunch of guys, but they signed, old starting pitching veterans that had injury histories. That they hit the IL. Then they're kind of scrambling. But there's the stories like the Baltimore Orioles are going to be a really fun team to watch. The Seattle Mariners again this year. Like MLB just came out with their rankings of the top starting rotations. The Mariners are at the top of their list. If you watch my Mariners preview videos, it could be a historic rotation that the Mariners have. They could have one of the top bullpens in the league, and then retooling, their lineup this coming into this year really puts them in a great spot to be one of those Cinderella stories to finally make it to the World Series, since they are the only franchise that has not yet made it to a World Series.
And it's kind of funny. So speaking of the Mariners, because I mean, growing up watching baseball, I recall watching like on my television. I loved the days when I watched Griffey Jr. I loved watching the days when Ichiro was the big thing internationally. And it just, I mean, that 116 game winning season, I mean, that will forever be enshrined in Seattle history. So when you look at the Mariners from back then and what they are right now, because I'm happy for the city of Seattle to finally have that energy back and to finally have a really decent rotation, a really good lineup that starts from their caliber in Julio Rodriguez. How do you just, going from history and what they are right now? I mean, this had been a long time coming for the Mariners, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in 2022, they broke their 20-year playoff drought. I was there for that game in Seattle. Unfortunately, they got swept by the Astros. But the energy in the city when the playoffs were back in Seattle, it's going to happen again this year, and I expect them to make a deep run. It's an electric time, an electric city, and that's where comparing their starting rotation to every single rotation that they've had in the past. This year has the potential to be the best starting rotation in franchise history. And, I was talking with Gary Hill Jr., who's a regular broadcaster for the Mariners. And he says, I think that statement is, unquestionable. That's just, you look at it from top to bottom, 1 through 5, every guy has the ability to go out there and control the outcome of the game. They're all throwing 95 plus with disgusting off speed stuff. It's, Luis Castillo at the top, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby. All three of those guys are in the top 10 in Cy Young, favorites for the AL. So it's going to be a scary good rotation, historic, like I said, and they could make history again this year.
So talking about it with Luis Castillo, because when I watched that trade from him going from Cincinnati to Seattle, and I mean, you looked at how good his mechanics were and how he got control of a lot of his pitches. And I think the Mariners kind of looked at it and saying, this guy is going to be the pinnacle of what our rotation is meant to be. Like, how impressed were you when the time when he got here and then now being the opening day starter for this organization? I mean, this is kind of where it all starts. Do you think this is a guy that to start it out with, he's going to definitely ride that train along and get them to a point where this is what solid pitching is going to look like for Seattle and even for against in their competition in the AL West?
Yeah, so he was acquired at the trade deadline in 2022 when the Mariners were making that push for the playoffs, and to add a legit ace to the front of your rotation, and I mean it's a huge impact move, and the Mariners gave up quite a bit in top prospects, Noelvi Marte, Edwin Arroyo, just to name a couple of them. There's been news since about Noelvi Marte, Arroyo's out for the year, but to add Luis Castillo, no matter how much it costs. And at that time, it was just for a year and a half of him. The Mariners were able to extend him beyond that for a few more years now. And so to have Luis Castillo, his nickname's La Piedra, the Rock, he really is the rock of the rotation. George Kirby has the potential to win that Cy Young this year. He has the potential with his elite command and put away stuff to be an ace. Gilbert, in his own right, could be an ace in a lot of these franchises. So to have the top three, really. Then you add Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, but to have Luis Castillo at the top, like you mentioned, as the staple of the lineup, I think is massive.
So let's talk Julio Rodriguez, because I mean, when the kid came into the scene at his rookie season, I mean, the kid was just fantastic. He brought up a lot of speed. He was a 5-tool type stud. He gave you speed, he gave you contacts, and he gave you power. But he was also somebody that the Mariners, for a very long time, was looking for somebody that could be the potential face of this franchise, because it has been a long time. I mean, from Griffey Jr., they thought they would have found that staple with Robinson Cano, but I felt like Rodriguez just felt so right to me. So last season, I don't think it was necessarily he suffered a sophomore slump. He still had solid numbers. I think he's in the caliber, and I predicted this, that I think he's going to be sneaky good this year, that I think we might consider him in the top 5 of MVP. How do you kind of outlook that?
Yeah, I think there's no question that he's right there in the MVP race. He's going to be there every year, really. One thing to note is that last year after his rookie campaign, he started to show off his personality, and people saw who he was. MLB really put him in the limelight or the spotlight, and he started taking deals here and there with different brands. And as he has talked about through interviews this offseason, he started to pull back on that stuff this offseason, and heading into this year, he's going to focus on himself and his preparation more than anything. Last year where he was signing a ton of autographs, talking to media, doing all these things, he's going to be much more limited heading into this year, and to focus on the results so that, like you look at his stats, that's not a slump, but it was a regression from his rookie year technically. But heading into this year, he has a different kind of focus. He's wanting to be the best player on the field. It's very realistic to see a 40-40 season out of him this year. We saw 40-70 out of Acuna. As high as the ceiling is for Acuna, there's no reason why Julio Rodriguez can't be at that same tier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I loved watching him too, even from the World Baseball Classic, and just, a guy that really showed like the type of player and the type of person that he really is, a personality, like loving guy that I think Seattle fans really are so thankful to have and to really build around. So I think, yeah, I think this is going to be the biggest come up for him. I do smell all-star selection. I do smell a top 5 MVP. I think this kid is just fantastic. He just honestly fits the bill of what the Mariners have been searching for a very long time. I'm excited for this kid in his 24 campaign. So, as being Nab, the couch GM, now I got to say, Jerry DePoto got busy this offseason. And so, and I think one of the sacrifices, and part of that, I mean, they lose Eugenio Suarez, in trade to the Arizona Diamondbacks. But I mean, he sat down and really had to kind of get very thorough of, we have the group, we have the team of even building from our farm. He had to get serious. And so when you start to, look at Jerry DePoto's mind, I mean, going through this offseason, this is the most important that we've seen the Astros. We just saw the Rangers win a World Series. It was time for these boys to step up. What was kind of your look with Jerry DePoto this offseason?
Yeah, so the whole reason for the offseason and the moves is that shortly after the offseason started, there was news that came out that Root Sports, which is the cable television network that the Mariners had bought, uh, ne- uh, uh, Comcast was moving up Root Sports to a higher package, so fans were going to have to pay more per month just to watch Mariners games, and they were also already doing bad as far as subscriber loss. And so, with potential revenue shortages, basically the news came out that the Mariners are going to be restricted with payroll. And so that led to the moves that followed in the trade of Eugenio Suarez and his contract, in the trade of Jared Kelenic to the Braves, along with Evan White and Marco Gonzalez basically to offload those contracts. They gave Jared Kelenic in order for the Braves to do so. And then there was the trade for, trading away Robbie Ray and his multiple years left on his contract. So the reason for a lot of those moves was because of the payroll issues that the Mariners were seeing in the future. But then, the moves that they made to bring in guys with some of those contracts that were freed up, they were able to sign Mitch Garver on Christmas Eve. It was basically a tale of two halves for this offseason. One was the teardown, partial teardown, to where fans are like, what is going on? Trading Jared Kelenic, a top prospect. Eugenio Suarez was a lineup guy. Teoscar Hernandez hit free agency, but then you get Mitch Garver, and then you trade for Mitch Haniger. You go and trade for Jorge Polanco, which is a guy that Mariners fans have been wanting for a while. Second base has been a black hole for the Mariners for a while, and so to have Polanco there is going to be a big piece. But yeah, I think, looking at it today compared to, a month into the offseason, I think the lineup looks great. It goes from a lineup that was largely reliant in walks, strikeouts, and home runs to a much more consistent lineup you're going to see guys making contact a lot more. You're not going to see as many bases loaded, no outs, grounding into double plays, or just striking out and not scoring any runs. There's going to be a lot more consistent run production this year on top of that elite pitching.
Now, see, I always say this for my fans is that, listen, that's the kind of baseball I know and love right there, because I will rather take that than to be out in, Hollywood and just, hitting home runs, striking out, X amount of times. But it's like, when I watched the best World Series I think I've ever watched in my life was the 14 Giants Royals, because it was like you didn't rely on, home runs. You relied on smart pitching. You relied on smart batting and trying to drive in runs and trying to rattle pitchers' cages. So that kind of philosophy in the mind, and even for, for a lot of these guys in Seattle, I mean, that's got to be the outlook in order to win the games, to win playoff games, and make it a deeper run to getting in potentially to the World Series. Now, on the side note on that, since you mentioned about it with, Root Sports and Comcast Sports, I got to ask you, because when I grew up as a kid, I used to love it when it was so simplistic when it came to airing it out on television. We had Fox Sports Prime Ticket and West, and then we had a lot of others, and they were all in one place. Now I've got Valley Sports, I've got Root Sports, there's so many other subscriptions from here. And I've said it in this way: the more this happens, sometimes you try to upcharge the subscriptions. Sometimes it kind of takes a little bit of a toll of your fan base, because they want to watch the game. They may not end up going to it, going to the ballparks, but they may want to watch the game to where it's easier. Do you have a thought on that? Because I've just had that kind of thought for years about this, and I'm like, why can't Major League Baseball just be simplistic when it came to television airing of all 30 clubs.
Yeah, it's not, an easy solution or easy answer. One, because, the Mariners and other teams have contracts with these companies and Comcast and whoever their TV providers are. So until that contract is up, they really don't have the flexibility that might be needed to, e- you know, uh, to be on the good side of fans. Fans have been pretty upset. One, because the Mariners haven't been willing to spend on payroll in the past few years. Then you come back to them and say, hey, I know we just missed the playoffs after making the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, but now we're going to need you to pay more to watch the team that you love. And so everything is moving towards streaming and towards independent media. So at some point after these big contracts are up, I assume that, if the Mariners have the Mariners app to where you can pay $30 a month or $20 a month, something like that, to watch all the Mariners games there just on the app, fans would sign up in a heartbeat, because then you can get rid of the big cable package. You could just basically go a la carte to where you're picking whatever individual things that you want to be watching. So that's where everything is moving, it seems like. And if that turns into, like a Major League Baseball thing to where you just do a subscription like MLB.tv, but every team is included instead of all these blackouts. Rob Manfred talks about wanting to grow the game. If you want to grow the game, you got to get rid of the blackouts and actually allow people to watch all the games that they want to.
Yeah, see, and I've said this multiple times. I mean, ever since we had the shutdown in 2020, that was plenty of time to get rid of the blackout, especially if you're in the LA County area or you're up there in the Pacific Northwest. It's like, come on, man. Like I paid this subscription to not have this blackout. And you had at the very least an entire year to figure this out. And then it's like, nope, they still are going through the subscription. So I don't know. I just hope at some point they get it through that, like, this is what hurts fan bases, and usually you don't get as much of this than you should if you just simplify it in the right ways, kind of come up with it where it's much more, financially friendly, and you start growing fan bases and more people enjoy baseball. That's why, the NFL is so king for it, because we've got so many different matchups and it's becoming more globally, and then you're getting everything. We're in baseball, it's slowly making that mark because the pace of play is starting to speed up now with the pitch clock and so much more. But hopefully they could figure this out with the television rights and with all of this, so we could get rid of these blackouts, and hopefully everybody can just enjoy baseball the same. Um, Quickly, because I've revealed my top 10 teams in my previous episode. So from 10 to 1, I have the Reds, Mariners, Yankees, D-backs, Astros, Rangers, Orioles, Phillies, Braves, and Dodgers. I just think with this top 10, when putting the Mariners there at night, I love their rotation. It's very young, and Luis Castillo is that pillar of that rotation. But I also do like how underrated that lineup really is. When you go from Julio Rodriguez to Cal Raleigh and a lot of these guys, I mean, Seattle, when you look at the American League as a whole, you go and start the postseason today. I mean, I see them really, getting into a good series against the Yankees. I think between the Astros, I see a 7-game series again, but I do think there's unfinished business from there. How do you kind of shape that if, in fact, the postseason were to start? What the Mariners have to expect in order for them to get to the road to the World Series?
Yeah, for the Mariners, it's going to be the health of the starting rotation as well as the lineup. That's the only question about the Mariners lineup, is the health of Mitch Garver, of Mitch Haniger, of some of these guys, on top of their starting rotation staying healthy. For the most part, they've been very healthy in the prior years, aside from Robbie Ray going down last year. But, they have the depth in Brian Wu is starting the year on the injured list right now, but they have Emerson Hancock, who just came up to fill that spot. I think the Mariners, they have a good shot at winning the AL West. Of course, the Astros are always going to be a contender. They also have their health concerns in the rotation. They have a few guys starting on the IL right now. The Rangers, again, health. The DeGrom, Scherzer, all those older guys in the rotation. A lot of these teams have the same problems. The Yankees, they have a stacked offense. Garrett Cole is starting the season on the IL. So I think the Mariners are in a great spot right now. For the most part, they're completely healthy. It's just maintaining that health, and then they can beat any of these teams in a 5-game series.
So Mitch Haniger coming back to the Mariners. I mean, I loved watching him in his time in Seattle because he was the prime example of what a smart hitter's supposed to look like. Like, I mean, I watch Justin Turner every year, and the guy is just he's slapping it to right field every time he's got a chance and scoring in those runs. I get the same vibe from Mitch Haniger. So he does take, I believe it was 1 year off, and then comes back to Seattle. How do you outlook Mitch Haniger this year? Because are you going to get this kind of the similar vibe from when he was previously in Seattle and to coming into this year?
Yeah, I did not have Mitch Haniger returning to Seattle on my bingo card this offseason. Um, he's had the injury concerns, and it's been various different things. They're all completely fluky injuries. Also, when you look at it, in 2021, he had a 39 home run, 100 RBI season. So that Mitch Haniger is still somewhere in him, and if it's all about health, like what I just talked about, if they can keep him healthy, and that's where the platoons of Dominic Canzone and Luke Raley to help balance out, so that if he needs off days, that they have those guys to plug in there. Mitch Haniger, the leadership that he brings, the passion that he brings, he was a part of that team that broke the drought. Bringing him back is a lot more than just what the production that he can bring on the field is. It's in the clubhouse. It's helping those younger guys. And so I'm really excited to see Mitch Haniger. He was actually the first Mariner jersey that I personally bought when we traded for him back in like 2017. So yeah, really excited to see Mitch Haniger on top of Mitch Garver. We got the two Mitches. Yeah, Mitch 2.0.
There you go. And you know what, Mitch Haniger, he wears my favorite number, love 17, man. And so anytime, like I tell people all the time, you see that number, just you're going to expect a clutch hit, whether it's a homer or it's just scoring in 2 runs on an opposite field hit. So I'm excited for this, man. And I do got to ask a fun question before letting you go. So being in like the Pacific Northwest, I got to know what the culture is like from here because I mean, when I watch Seahawk fans when they got to the Super Bowl at least 3 times in their organization's history, finally winning one. Thanks, Russ. Can't seem to do it in Denver, but but the vibe there, they are so invested from Seahawks to Mariners, and then now you've got them with the Seattle Kraken, which I'm really excited about. But I am also one of those people that's still pulling for the Supersonics return. And I'm like, it's got to happen. I mean, like, how do you view the Pacific Northwest? Because I've never been to Seattle before. My sister's visited there. She's been to the Pop Culture Museum. She's been to a lot of those places. It's a beautiful spot. Very much a lot of humidity and a lot of moisture up out there. So what's the culture like there?
As far as the culture, it's a great sports town, great sports city. The summers in Seattle, you really can't beat it. Like you mentioned, it's absolutely gorgeous out here. It's the mountains, it's the water, it's the evergreen trees. You got to come check it out sometime. Colorado is amazing, but Seattle also, the culture, the fans are passionate. When when you're still supporting a team after 20 years of not winning, you could say, that kind of speaks to the culture of the city and the fan base that are rooting for the Mariners. And so of course the Sonics deserve to come back. The Kraken, I haven't been to a game yet, but I've seen videos and heard people talking about it, and it's a perfect city for sports, and it's perfect city for the Mariners to do something this year.
Man, now you just put it right there on my bucket list of places to visit for there. Me and my wife, we love traveling. We love going to different spots. So we definitely will have that right there up on our list. But yeah, last year, I will say, side note, I was pulling for the Kraken to get there to the Western Conference final against Vegas because I would have loved seeing 2 expansion teams for the first time ever just being in a conference final. That would have just been absolutely bonkers for Seattle and just really excited for the future. So appreciate you, man. Always bringing in great stuff, man. Where can people find you? Catching up on Mariners and more of what the Couch GM's got on his mind.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. You could just look up the Couch GM across platforms: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. Yeah, look for the guy sitting on the couch with the baseball hat, and that's my logo. So yeah, I'm trying to put out as much quality content on the Mariners and baseball as I can. I'm definitely gonna expand more this year to talk about current trending topics, not just the Mariners, although they of course are going to be the focus. And yeah, it's going to be a really fun year. A lot of fun teams to watch. So make
Well,
sure to tune in.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, you're doing an absolute fantastic job. Keep it up, man. And as everybody, in the industry that we work in, man, it gets tiring. It's a lot, but you know what? Quality is what produces the quantity, man. So love exactly all the content that you got. I'm keeping an eye out on the Mariners because, again, they're my sneaky dark horse team to really make some serious noise in the 24 season. But appreciate you, Connor. Thanks for stopping on by. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, guys.
Hey there, everyone. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you guys like, follow, and subscribe to get the latest from the show. Also, go check out a few of our coolest segments that we've had from previous shows. And also make sure that you stay up to date on the show on all platforms, wherever you guys find your podcasts.